Hello and welcome to another Dead Air Clinically Dead podcast. Usually these podcasts are just for Spotify, but this one is also going onto YouTube so that everything can be updated about the latest goings on the channel. As always, there are plenty of videos recorded that are ready to be edited. Just to give you an update, Halloween is done. Even though it's July at the minute, I've already got October's videos ready. It's still a secret where I went for that, but it was an incredible place and it was a bucket list location of mine for some time. I actually managed to get 3 videos out of one trip. I was maybe expecting 1 or 2, but one of them was an old manor house, which doesn't get a lot of coverage, especially not the coverage it deserves for the stories that go on inside this place. But locals over there know everything about it, and it's got such a reputation, and it didn't disappoint. I also got to go outside and record a nearby outdoor location, which has links in a way to the house. I'd booked the trip, and I was watching the weather app for like a week before I went, hoping that it wouldn't be raining on the night that I was there, and it was kind of a bit 50-50, but I got lucky, and it's an incredible place. If this was in England, every paranormal group and every TV show would be wanting to get into this place and record. It's incredible. You'll have to wait till Halloween. You'll see why this place is so unique. The people over on this place love it. Absolutely love it. It's got so much of a reputation. Everybody who lives there knows the stories. It's incredible. And Dead Air has got in there, and I think we've done it justice. And finally, whilst I was also visiting for a bit of sightseeing, as you know, I like to go travelling, another paranormal group who were local got wind that I was there, and I was then contacted by another location, allowing me access to go and film and talk about the ghost stories that are happening on a different site. This was amazing, and I can't thank the people involved in this project enough for reaching out and allowing me access to go there. I'll tell you a little bit more about it as we get closer to Halloween, but as you know, I try to get into hundreds of places, and quite often it's simply no, you're not allowed to. Or simply they don't want it to happen, or they don't want you to video it, or whatever reason, sometimes they don't get comfortable with it, and fair enough, it's their location, and I respect that. So a big shout out to all the locations that I've been into over the years. It's been massively helpful for the channel that we can get in there and record. And for those of you that follow the Dead Air Paranormal Investigations on YouTube, Dead Air TV, may have seen that a video was posted quite recently from an ambulance station in Blyth in the northeast of England in the UK. However, things have kind of spiralled out of control since the video went up, and it's had to be taken down. The people have had a full change of mind and decided that they didn't really want this out there in the public domain. And I'll explain what happened later on. If you haven't seen it, I know some of you were lucky enough to see it in the first day or two that it went live, but I was invited to an industrial estate, literally the most anonymous looking industrial estate in the town of Blyth on the northeast of England. It's very much industry. It's right by the river. There's a port there. And right next door, there's a car garage that fixes cars, MOTs, and all sorts going on. Just your normal industrial estate. Places you wouldn't expect to have cracking ghost stories. But a haunting is what staff who are working at the ambulance station are reporting. In fact, multiple members of staff working there have reportedly experienced all kinds of strange events, from children's voices, objects being moved on their own, singing outside, and figures being seen inside the building when nobody should be inside. And it gets even more interesting when you find out what was on this exact spot over 100 years ago. The unit was built directly on the area where a former isolation hospital for infectious diseases once stood in Victorian times, back in 1893. This would have been where people with diseases like smallpox would have been treated, a disease that has a mortality rate of 80% in children. Whilst the video is offline, one of the drivers who worked there, Steve, agreed to let me use this piece of audio that he's experienced. This is some of his personal accounts.
The first sort of strange thing that ever happened was I do night shift here on a kind of a permanent basis, and one of my colleagues during one of the sort of quieter hours of the night was on this sofa here, and I decided to go for the quick fag. It's sort of about 3ish in the morning. This is sort of a unit where there's after hours there's nobody around. It's dead. It's quiet. No house, don't know house or anything around. I'd gone outside. I was stood outside the roller, shut our doors, just kind of in the world of my own, and I heard quite loudly the sound of somebody walking, sort of sound of footprints, footsteps, and the sound of the sliding door on the side of one of the ambulances close. Clear as day, couldn't be mistaken for anything else. And I thought to myself, what the hell is he doing at the ambulance? So I just popped my head back round the door, and I can see him from where I was. He was sound asleep. And I thought, who the hell is that? So for a second, I thought it was someone in the unit next door, but it's not. All the shutters were down. Their alarm was on. They don't even have vans in there, so it couldn't have been them. That was the first thing. That was about a year and a half, probably 2 years ago. One peculiar incident was I went out one night again for a fag. It seemed to be a same sort of time, sort of between sort of 2 and 4 in the morning. Still outside, and just round the corner, I heard the sound of kids, young people, singing together, as if you could imagine them walking along. Not in a Christmas carol-y sort of upbeat way, more of a sort of a morose sort of singing, chanting sort of sound. And it got gradually louder. It was a good 45 seconds I heard it, and I was a little bit spooked because it's not something I expect to hear, and not something I've ever heard before. And it got sort of gradually louder and louder and louder until it got to the corner of the complex here. And I was just expecting to see a group of people walking along, and in a fraction of a second, it just stopped. Except it just stopped singing. I thought, what the heck's that? So I had a little walk up. I looked. There's no one around. The place is completely dead. I've heard the sound of little girls giggling, sort of young, sort of, I would estimate anywhere between sort of 8 and 12-year-old, just outside the front gates. It's like a sort of grassy area. The little girl sort of playing, quite indistinct. You couldn't hear anything they were saying, but it was just that sort of sound. It was almost like it was a sound bite that was getting played over and over again. One of my colleagues, she's been here for, I think, about 6 or 7 years. She was feeling quite ill one night. She was covering for a night shift, and as it happened, she was feeling ill at the time. She wished she'd never done it, but she had to do it because she'd volunteered. She went outside. She was feeling a bit sick, and she stood outside, and she could hear the sound of little kids singing. And she got the spooks, and she came straight back in. And she didn't really want to say anything. It was only when I sort of relayed my encounter to her one day while I was sitting talking, she came out and she told me that. She says, "But don't say anything else because people think I'm mad." Sound regularly. There's in the corner of the building, which is where most of the energy comes from, as far as I can tell. We'll have like a load of mop buckets, as you can imagine, for clearing out the ambulances. Have a couple of different colour mop buckets, obviously, for the areas that are clean. On at least 3 occasions, there have been a red mop bucket has been, for want of a better word, booted across the floor. It's a very distinctive sound of a plastic bucket. We've gone out, we've looked. Sure enough, there's been one in the middle of the floor, where they're all sort of lined up against the wall. That's a bit weird. About a few weeks ago, my colleague went and he got a fresh pack of Warburton's bread buns, still sealed, still had the little tag on. Brought it through, laid them out on the table, opened them up, put one for me and one for him, went out, made himself a coffee. I was just sat on the table fiddling with my phone. When he came and sat back down, he lifted the bread bun up and he said, "You put that butter on for, do you think? What the hell?" But thanks. Anyway, sort of thing. I can't remember the exact terms. And I says, I haven't even touched it. And when he looked, both sides of this fresh bread bun were caked, and I mean caked with Lurpak. You could see the knife marks, but it was like, you couldn't have eaten it. It was like half an inch thick. And I said, what the heck's happened there? When we looked, he picked up a knife, bone dry knife, straight out the drawer. The pack, I hadn't been touched. And he thought I was winding him up, and I thought he was winding him up. But I was sat on that chair, and Dad definitely never touched it. And that gave me this book, so I've never really heard of anything happen like that. That was bizarre.
This is also backed up by a history forum that I have found where people who worked in a different unit but on the same industrial estate were reportedly seeing the apparition of a young girl on a regular basis. The post was made on this forum back in 2012 and it is still visible now. So what went wrong? Why did they suddenly change their minds? Well, yes, I was invited to go along. I visited the unit on 2 separate occasions, and I double-checked that whilst I was there, I had the permission to be able to film and make a video on the area. In fact, 2 of the drivers who work there are Dead Air subscribers on YouTube and like the channel. So I filmed a nighttime investigation, which was cleared, and I went back a second time to film what is known as B-roll footage. That's basically the shots around the building that you see at the start of the video that I talk over. I usually do these shots in the days after the investigation so that I know which areas to focus on, and you will see in the actual investigation segment. Everything was fine at this point. Management were aware, and we had agreed to conceal company logos, and I suggested using sheets of A4 paper to stick with blue tack on the side of the ambulances to conceal the company's logo, and we made sure that no confidential information would be visible at all times. Only staff members who wished to be named were named, and when working staff arrived back at the station, filming stopped, and I only continued when the building was empty again. A member of staff stayed on site at all times, and I was never alone in the building. These were all things that were cleared and agreed beforehand. As the weeks went past, I posted other videos. There's plenty in the can, but I really wanted to fast track this one as I thought it was quite a good video and I really wanted to get it out there. The staff were really welcoming and friendly to me whilst I was on the site, even the skeptics too, and I'm told that since it has gone live, it has given them some entertainment to talk about over those long shifts that can drag on. The video did go live. A preview was sent out just before, and then it went live last Saturday. For those of you that were lucky enough to catch it when it first went out, the video captured several unexplained things. Here is a piece of audio. I heard a girl shouting outside, and I was delighted that one of my mics also picked this up, although I admit it's not as clear as it sounded in the moment. But I got it, and this supports the claims that have been made by staff that they're hearing children outside of the shutters of this building at silly times of night, like 4 o'clock in the morning. That's going to flash, that's going to go up. I've tested this at home when I've had moths in the house, and a moth. Someone outside. Someone outside. I also suffered battery drainage on pieces of my equipment. My REM pod just died. Yet minutes before, I was showing Steve, one of the ambulance drivers, how all my equipment works, since most people have never seen this kind of stuff in the flesh. And whilst I was changing the batteries on these pieces of equipment, I put the camera down on a table, and I managed to catch the camera then zooming out after I placed it down, even though you can hear that I'm stood nowhere near it. And the button to zoom in and out on this camera is like a little toggle that you have to hold and put pressure on to zoom in, and then press it the other way to zoom out. As the video was online, it got quite a lot of interest, as I suspected it would, as after all, this is a bit of a different type of building. We're not in castles telling ghost stories that people might have already heard before or seen another paranormal channel or TV show already covering in the past. This was a brand new location, and maybe this was your town, and this is such a weird place to be haunted as well. Then, last Tuesday, I received a message to say the head office had decided they weren't happy with all of this being out there and decided that they wanted it taken down. Even the staff I've spoken to in the following days have been frustrated by this, as they really enjoyed it. But I've had to take it down out of respect. It's their company, and what they do is much more important than what I do. And it is frustrating. It, in a way, has been a complete waste of time. Yes, I was invited down there. It took several weeks to create this video, from filming, researching, and all the video editing that goes on. But I decided to unlist the video, meaning that only people with the link will be able to see it, but they still weren't happy, so I've had to take the full thing offline. This is surprisingly the first time it has ever happened to me, and whilst the company aren't getting any promotion from this, I just wanted to go along and capture some evidence that those drivers working night shifts are reporting to suggest that they're not going crazy after all. They're actually getting laughed at by other members of the team for some of the stories that they're coming out with. Those who watch the channel might notice that I don't do filming without permission. Buildings that I go into are fully aware of what I'm doing. I don't go urbexing or trespassing. I'm just not the type to go into most cemeteries either without a reason, simply because I don't want to make anything that could be viewed as disrespectful. Why did they change their minds? Well, if I'd come away with a quiet night and concluded that the building wasn't haunted, would they have been okay with that? Was that what they were expecting? Do they think that maybe believing that their place is haunted is making them look silly? I mean, it sounds daft, but you'd be surprised how many people believe that. They even had a psychic medium commenting on the video, suggesting that they could go along and help. Had this spooked them? Maybe they were worried that people who were in the area might have been attracted to go along and have a look at the site. This kind of stuff does happen. If you tell the internet an area or a place is haunted, people will go down. I did have to reveal the area of the industrial estate, which was in context with the history of the land. I'm told the official reason is that it was originally approved, but somebody higher up in management, working on a completely different site, objected to it. Whatever their reason, the video is now offline, and I'm solely focusing on making new things for the page very shortly, which is annoying because I could have been doing something else. I could have been putting another video out for you guys that would have been out there all the time. Instead, I put an entire month's worth of work basically into a video that didn't get anything. So what are my conclusions from this place? Well, I think the staff working night shifts here do have a point. For me to experience one thing on my first night there in just a few hours is quite cool. Some of the staff that are reporting lots of experiences have worked there for years. So yeah, there you have it. Do I think it's haunted? Well, I think that site is very, very interesting, and I think it needs properly investigated, but sadly, I don't think that's ever going to happen. So there you have it. I'm sorry about that. I'm always happy to abide the rules, but there's nothing I can do when the rules get changed. I'm already working on editing more videos, and as always, everything in them has been filmed, of course, with permission, and I'm always grateful for people that allow me to do these videos. I'd like to thank the people who made this visit to the allegedly haunted ambulance station possible. Those staff members are awesome, and they work long hours doing a lot for the community. At least, we very briefly gave them some entertainment. So there you have it. If you like the Dead Air Paranormal Investigations, head over to Dead Air YouTube, it's Dead Air TV, and give us a subscribe, and there's plenty of videos on there, all of course filmed with permission. And if you want to subscribe to our podcasts, now this was a bit of an update, so it's not our usual sounding podcast. We've got things on there such as time slips, Egyptian mummies, all sorts on there, different subjects each time. Then head over to Spotify and follow the Dead Air Clinically Dead podcast. But until next time, take care.